From the Ministry of the Presidency in Georgetown, this is This Week with the President.
Welcome to another edition of This Week with the President, a weekly news magazine which provides you with an in-depth look at the policies, programs, and work of the President of Guyana in his quest to realize the good life for all Guyanese. I'm your host, Granger. Thank you for joining us. In the highlights this week, President envisions Iwokrama as Biodiversity, Botany and Zoology Education Center. Government will do all that is possible to encourage diaspora investments. President Granger reiterates commitment to strong, unbribable public service sector. Do stay with us. Though small, Guyana has vast amounts of untouched, pristine rainforest, which it intends to use to combat the effects of the dreaded climate change phenomenon. The Iwokrama International Center for Rainforest Conservation and Development is a prime example of the untouched, pristine rainforest which Guyana can boast of having. Since his assumption to office in May 2015, President David Granger has used every available opportunity to advocate for a green Guyana, a Guyana that will embrace sustainable practices, introduce innovative ways to provide employment and a good life, and one that will call attention to its light carbon footprint. In April, during his visit to the United Nations, President Granger used the opportunity to speak to the Italian Prime Minister, Mr. Matteo Renzi, about funding from that country for the Iwokrama Center. In May, the President then met with Chief Executive Officer of Iwokrama, Mr. Dane Gobin, to get a full update on its operations. During that meeting, President Granger assured Mr. Gobin of his unconditional support for Iwokrama, which he said is central to the green agenda that has been identified for Guyana. In keeping with this commitment and to emphasize his administration's goal to the Green Guyana, President Granger and First Lady Mistress Sandra Granger last Saturday visited the Iwokrama Center. The President said he believes that Iwokrama has the potential to become a biodiversity, zoology and botany center for education.
Well, Iwokrama has been in existence for over 20 years. It is in the heart of Guyana. It is an area that is bigger than Malta, bigger than the island, bigger than the country of Malta. It's very important to our green agenda. And my reason for going there is to let Guyanese understand what is taking place there. It's not a sideshow. It doesn't belong to some foreign entity. It belongs to us. It's in the heart of our country. And without biodiversity, without a sustainable exploitation of our resources, we will not be able to develop this country quickly and fully. What I see is that the future of Guyana is in Iwokrama. The future of Guyana is in preserving our forests and our environment so that it could be used more beneficially, not just for this generation, for the next generation. That is one of the reasons why I said, things like manatees and tapirs and so on mustn't find themselves in a pepper pot. We must preserve them because they're more value to us alive than dead. And I want to see Iwokrama as a flagship project so that people can use sustainable energy or renewable energy in terms of solar, wind, biomass, and water. I want to see them use recycling products. I want to see children learning about our flora and fauna. And I see Iwokrama as a big laboratory, a green laboratory.
While the President visited the center during his time in opposition, his visit to the center last week is the first time that a sitting head of state has visited the facility and traversed across the canopy walkway. President Granger said that his visit to the center has only sought to reaffirm his government's commitment to making it one in which Guyanese value and appreciate. He pledged that his government will work to ensure that Guyanese children are presented with the opportunity to visit the center through the provision of infrastructural development. Works are in progress at the Fairview airstrip, which is likely to be extended to about 4,200 feet to facilitate larger aircrafts, as it is set to become a hub for flights to and from Iwagwama. This development will also allow for faster and easier access to the center, particularly for Guyanese and Caribbean students, in addition to tourists and researchers from around the world.
Coming here for the first time, I can only say the experience is fantastic. I would like to see more Guyanese children get this opportunity to walk really almost at treetop level and to look out to see what a beautiful country we have. So it fills me with a lot of pride, national pride, and of course deepens my commitment to the environment and to this green agenda that we've adopted.
You mentioned that you would like to see more Guyanese children being able to come here, but you know that the limitations with the road and there are other things that limit access to the hinterland. What is your vision for solving that problem?
We're working on that. We're improving the airstrip here at Iwagwama at the village of Fairview. We are working towards bridging the Essequibo at Kurupukari and improving the road from Linden. So in coming months, if not years, I hope in coming months, we'll be able to get a greater volume of Guyanese and people from the Caribbean coming to this very important center.
As it relates to funding, the President noted that while government will do all that is possible to ensure that Guyanese children, especially, are given the chance to visit the center, civil society and the private sector must also play a lead role.
We want to see this as part of the education system. We want to see more students coming. We want to see, obviously the government will have to play a greater role, but at the same time we expect the corporate community and civil society to understand the importance of Iwagwama to the green agenda and to livelihood in Guyana as a whole. So it is not going to be a government project, it's going to be a national project, and I expect that in the fullness of time not only Commonwealth would adopt it more fully, but also that the Caribbean community would understand the importance of Iwagwama to their future.
Meanwhile, as Iwagwama is being positioned to realize the President's vision, efforts have also been undertaken in the local regions and municipalities across the country as Guyana adapts and takes steps to counter the adverse effects of climate change. The most prominent initiative that highlights these efforts is the Green Bartica project. A brainchild of the President, the Green Bartica project aims to ensure that the tongue at the heart of the Cuyuni-Mazaruni region becomes the first municipality that can boast of sustainable and positive growth and development.
I would like to see the responsible disposal of solid waste. Right now there are some open pits which are a hazard, and that is one area. The second area is energy. We need to reduce the consumption of fossil fuels, diesel and gasoline, and use more sustainable energy for the lighting Bartica. Use more wind power, solar power. We like to see the recycling of materials, plastics particularly, cardboard and paper. And we like to see more tree planting. One for food. I did, invite Bartica last year at the National Tree Day to plant one breadfruit tree in every yard, and it helps provide food because you've got 15,000 household residents there, and that will equate to about 5,000 households, or 3,000 to 5,000 households. And we want to see Bartica green, looking green, so all of the mined out areas will eventually be replanted through a program of reforestation.
Meanwhile, Iwagwama's CEO, Mr. Dane Gobin, said that the center is working to change its financial model as it cannot rely solely on donor funds anymore. In this regard, the center is embarking on a sustainable forestry project, which will be certified by the Forest Stewardship Council, FSC.
What we have chosen to do here is several products. So one is sustainable forestry, and this is now developing a model. It's a model of best practices, social, economic, and environmental best practice. It will be FSC certified. Iwagwama will be the only FSC certified institution in Guyana in about 3 months' time. 5 years ago, we were still the only FSC institution. So this is not just business, this is business with international best practice. That business started last year. We have a joint venture with Farfan and Mendez. We're now continuing to build capacity. You have to work with quirks with your machinery, and then the weather steps in, so sometimes you can't log. But we're actually looking for high value niche markets with FSC certification.
The center is also actively marketing itself through tourism. The CEO disclosed that Arakwama gets an average of 1,100 to 1,300 tourists annually. He said that while this is not a large amount, it is a consistent figure. Mr. Gowen said that with the advent of the rehabilitated Fairview airstrip, the center expects to attract more visitors and increase its earnings. Guyana is a rich country filled with great potential for investments. Since his assumption to office, President David Granger has spoken at length about the great mineral wealth which is possessed by Guyanese. This wealth, which is in the forms of flora, fauna, bauxite, gold, diamonds, and ecotourism, however, needs to be further developed so that every Guyanese can benefit from the good life which has been promised by the President.
Fellow Guyanese, we need not be poor ever again. Our country is rich in natural resources, and we are committed to ensuring that the diaspora must be a full part of that transformation that will secure the national. Guyana is the biggest and the most bountiful Caribbean country. We're the hinterland of the Caribbean. We are a land of lakes, of forests, of mountains, of rivers, of waterfalls. We're the land where the giants reside. Guyana, your motherland, is a mother of world-class giants.
The Guyanese diaspora, the President believes, has the skills, expertise, and capital needed to aid the economic development of the country. In keeping with his administration's thrust to advance the economy, President Granger has reiterated Guyana's openness to investors from the Guyanese diaspora. He again extended an invitation to Guyanese nationals in his address at Guyana's 50th Independence Anniversary Gala in New York, the United States of America. The President noted that the country is blessed and bountiful, and Guyanese who possess the skills and capital must be encouraged to invest in their motherland so that economic development can be fostered. He noted that while Guyana welcomes foreign investments and companies to its shores, it would be even more heartening to see overseas-based Guyanese investing in their land of birth.
Investment is the ignition to start up our engine of growth. You in the diaspora possess many qualities, but two of the most important that are needed to propel growth are your access to capital and availability of enterprise, expertise and enterprise. Guyanese living in the diaspora could establish their own companies as easily as the foreigners. It is good to have Russian bauxite companies, it's good to have Chinese bauxite companies, it's good to have Brazilian companies, diamond industry, it's good to have Canadian companies in the gold industry. It's better to have Guyanese companies.
In last week's edition of The Public Interest, the head of state noted that there are 350,000 Guyanese in the Canadian diaspora alone, and it is believed that those in the USA outnumber them. Noting that the average overseas-based Guyanese most likely out-earns the average Guyanese and therefore has the capital to invest and the expertise, it would be remiss of the administration not to tap into these valuable resources to further stimulate and advance the economy.
Many of them work in more advanced industries and services in the United States and elsewhere in North America than they would have worked in Guyana. So I appealed to them on those two grounds. One was capital and two was expertise. I don't think many of them will come back, but what I asked them to consider is the possibility of investment. They can stay where they are, but I pointed out that Americans invest in Guyana, Brazilians, Chinese, um, Canadians invest in Guyana. Why can't uh, Guyanese who are living in the United States or other parts of North America invest in Guyana? So, yes, that is my pitch. Capital and expertise. And I hope that we see some responsiveness on the part of the diaspora to those two calls.
For far too long, the president told the gathering at the dinner, Ghana has depended on the Six Sisters to boost its economy, with little to no improvements. It is time, he noted, for the economy to be diversified, and the Guyanese diaspora can play an integral role in this endeavor.
The diaspora is an integral part of our nation. Integral emotionally, integral economically, and integral experientially. The diaspora must be involved in the development of our nation. Guyana is for all of us. It must be developed for all of us, but by all of us who call ourselves Guyanese.
The Guyanese diaspora, President Granger believes, also has the skills and expertise needed to turn its raw materials, such as logs, into value-added products, which can see the country becoming an attraction and supplier of excellent quality furniture and other byproducts.
We need to develop our industry. We need to reduce our reliance on those Six Sisters, because as long as we rely on them alone, we'll be susceptible to the volatilities in the international commodity markets. We have to move along the chain of production. And as I've said over and over again, one of the saddest moments of my last campaign was to stand on the banks of the Berbice River at a place called Kalkuni and to see huge barges filled with raw bauxite going northwards. Huge barges filled with raw lumber going northwards. It is time we add value to our raw materials and produce furniture, produce aluminum in our own country. You Chinese Americans have the expertise, you have the experience to develop our capability in manufacturing.
With regard to investment in the non-traditional sectors, the president said that ecotourism continues to be a major draw to those in the diaspora. Many overseas-based Guyanese seem unaware of the country's natural patrimony, but can see the potential investment benefit in this sector.
And many of them were astonished to learn that the country of their birth had such a rich potential for ecotourism. That was the main, if you want to call it, non-traditional area. And yes, I see many of them operating tourist industries to bring visitors to Guyana to see this abundant flora and fauna that we possess. We have to learn a lot more about our country. I think the diaspora too has to learn a lot more. But if you come back to the original question, one, to bring their capital, because we need to fly people in those areas, and two, the expertise. We need to treat tourists with respect when they come here. They must feel safe, they must feel secure, and they'll keep on coming. We can't sell beaches, we can't sell our mud flats, we can't sell our mangroves, but we can sell our flora and fauna. And many tourists around the world are tired of the sun, sand, and sea. You know, they want to see something different, and we've got something different.
While he has not made any commitments to providing concessions to Guyanese interested in investing in the country, President Granger said that he expects that the usual allowances may be granted. He also pointed out that in order to create a level playing field, this category of investors will also benefit from the concessions offered to foreign companies.
Usually people search for tax holidays, waivers on equipment, and of course, the ability to repatriate their profits. I have no objection to those packages or to those items in the package. We have offered waivers before to new companies, new enterprises. We want to give them a level playing field, so nothing that's been offered to any foreign company would be denied to Guyanese investors.
Over the last few months, the President, through the Minister of Business, Mr. Dominic Gaskin, Prime Minister Moses Nagamutu, Minister of State Mr. Joseph Harmon and others have been engaging, meeting and interacting with members of the diaspora with the hope of encouraging these investments and finding out the conditions and needs which must be considered and met to secure the investment opportunities. Professionalism, efficiency and impartiality must become three hallmarks of the public service sector in Guyana. This has always been the push of President Granger since his assumption to office in May 2015. As a matter of fact, one of the first things he did upon his assumption to office as the President was to convene a meeting with the permanent secretaries of every government ministry, where he expressed these expectations. At that meeting, which was held at the Artichon Convention Center, President Granger made it clear that the senior public service, that it is his wish that the public service sector is restructured in such a way that it becomes unbribable. The President said that Guyana cannot run without an efficient public service, which is intended to ensure that the state is well governed, even as elected politicians serve their terms and leave. He described the public service as the engine of the executive, which must be efficient if services such as housing, education, law and order, and infrastructure are to be made available. But the engine needs oil, the President says, and that oil must be in the form of enhanced training, improved working conditions, and better wages and salaries.
But the public service is meant to ensure that the state is well governed. And politicians will be elected and they will leave, but the public service remains and is responsible for continuity. It's responsible for the maintenance of standards. It's responsible for the enforcement of the laws of the country. And any country that tries to be lawless is going to come to grief.
The government recognizes the importance of public servants in the overall development of Guyana and is committed to a consultative approach with the Guyana Public Service Union to ensure an efficient and professional public service. President Granger attended a ceremony at the Guyana Public Service headquarters to unveil 2 commemorative Jubilee plaques, where he reiterated his call for public officers who are committed to nation building.
But I am not interested in an unhappy, I'm not interested in an untrained, I'm not interested in an under-equipped and in an unprofessional public service. And I committed myself to set up a commission of inquiry under a respected academic, and he has presented his report, and copies of that report were made available to the GPSU. Before we move forward, we have to find out what are the issues, and you will give them an opportunity to articulate those issues. It's not the end of the road. I committed myself to a return to the negotiating process.
The Commission of Inquiry into the Public Service, which was headed by Professor Harold Lutchman and included Ms. Sandra Jones and Mr. Samuel Gulsaran, who served as commissioners, presented the completed report to President Granger at the Ministry of the Presidency in May. The President, in brief remarks then, after receiving the report, said that it has always been his vision for a strong public sector, one which is not only trained and educated, but which can ensure that efficiency is the order of the day, regardless which government is in power. Subsequent to the submission of the COI report, the public service and the government has now entered into talks with the GPSU to discuss a new approach to wages and salaries for state employees rather than the imposed across-the-board increases, which had become the norm.
I promised to find out, and I promised to sit with you so that we could resolve the difficulties facing this country. But let us sit down, and between us, let us work towards not only making Guyana a better place, but making the public service a better place.
The GPSU welcomes this new phase of collective bargaining. President of the union, Mr. Patrick Yard, said that while the union and the government will, from time to time, face each other across the negotiating table, they both share a common commitment to the development of the public service and the country as a whole.
These two institutions, government and the Guyana Public Service Union, are significant players in both the working and social lives of the nation's public servants. The government as the employer of public servants, and we, the union, as the legitimate representative of public service workers. We, the union, serve public service workers in different capacities. In this regard, those of you who are here this morning would be aware of the important nature of the discourse that has just begun between the government and the union regarding aspects of the welfare and well-being of public servants.
Mr. Yard said that the two plaques, one which is affixed to the facade of the building that houses the GPSU's headquarters at the junction of Shift, Chandapal Drive and Regent Street border, and the other at the union's sports complex in Thomas Lands, is symbolic of the union's relations with the government.
This occasion attests to the continuity of a relationship which we have sought to maintain across successive political administrations. It is this relationship, Your Excellency, which this union will seek to maintain.
And now let's take a look at the President's diary. President David Granger was on Friday paid a courtesy call by the President and Chief Executive Officer of Food for the Poor's Florida office, Mr. Robin Mahfood. The meeting was held at the Ministry of the Presidency. Mr. Mahfood was accompanied by Mr. Kent Vincent, CEO and Chairman of the Board of the Food for the Poor Guyana, along with Mr. Paul Chanasu and Mr. Bernier Jean. Mr. President Granger expressed his appreciation to the visiting delegation on behalf of the government and local beneficiaries. He said that Food for the Poor, which has been a household name in Guyana, has helped countless families to help themselves, particularly with its housing program. Women's empowerment is critical to the functioning of any strong society. This is the belief of the First Lady, Mistress Sandra Granger. Mistress Granger is of the view that empowering women, giving them the skills necessary to develop themselves, will ultimately lead to the development of their families, their communities, and consequently the country. Through the Self-Reliance and Success in Business workshops, which are being hosted across the country, women are accessing the opportunity to be equipped with the necessary business skills that can help them to make worthwhile contributions to society as small business owners. So far, communities in Regions 4, 5, 7, 9, and 10 have benefited, with Region 8 next on the schedule. These workshops are hosted by the Office of the First Lady and are funded by the Ministries of Social Protection and Indigenous Peoples Affairs. These workshops materialized from the vision of First Lady, whose work has over the past year centered on various initiatives aimed at women's empowerment as part of her approach to reach vulnerable populations with a range of services. The premise for the workshop was developed following a presentation made to First Lady by Interweave Solutions, a non-governmental organization that helps local entities in developing countries to expand their business sectors through training. Over the last few months, Self-Reliance and Success in Business workshops have been held in Lusignan in the Demerara-Mahaica region, Linden in the Upper Demerara-Berbice region, and the Upper Takatu, Upper Essequibo region, Mahaica-Berbice and Berrima-Waini regions. Since the President's assumption to office, the First Lady has been a strong advocate for her husband's policy priorities, including empowering citizens to become entrepreneurs, and has undertaken initiatives that support them. The First Lady has seized this message and zeroed in on mainly women, since women and their families can certainly benefit from this type of economic empowerment. At the most recent workshop hosted in Bartika, Kuyuni, Mazaruni, the First Lady said that it is important for women to recognize that they have marketable skills and they can be empowered to utilize them.
The concept is that women have a lot of skills that they don't recognize. In my own experience, we have women who are very good at many things, but they don't realize that those skills are marketable. And I'll give you one example. I was in Lusignan when I first started these workshops, and we were asking the ladies, well, what is it that you're specialized at? What are you good at? And there was one woman who said, well, you know, I don't do anything much. I just look after my children and so on. Her little daughter, who was with her, piped up, she make the best chicken foot. And I'm saying, she has a skill there. She's making great chicken foot. If she wants, she could make it and package it and market it and sell it and ease her financial burdens. You have a lot of women who are, in a sense, tied down to the home because they might have an elderly parent to look after, or they might have young children and they cannot go out and work, but they need money. They might have skills. They might be able to preserve jams or fruit or bake or sew or do something, or even in the caring of a parent, you're caring for a senior. That's a specialized care.
Several participants shared their expectations and experiences at the workshops. Some of them also noted that they had hoped to take the knowledge they garnered back to their communities to empower others.
Whatever I learn, I go and share with the rest of the people, because normally my daughter used to do the same work. But then after I get into it now, she said she too young and she ain't able this kind of work. So I decided to share with my small that she would fall in the same thing and be able to expand it in the community to see that more women doing the work instead of men alone.
To get in my business more big, I think I will gain the knowledge here to expand the business more in a wider perspective. So I guess in the kind of way.
The main facilitator of the program is Mr. Wayne Barrow of Interweave Solutions. Mr. Barrow explained that the organization is committed to ensuring that the participants are taught key business skills and that their management and other entrepreneurial talents are honed. Moreover, the purpose of the workshops are also twofold in that it encourages the women to develop community plans which focuses on the creation of groups that would discuss and resolve issues within their community. The First Lady has also received accolades from officials within the various regions for her work and the interest she has shown in women's affairs through this and other ventures over the past year. Mrs. Granger plans to take the self-reliance and success in business workshops to all of the regions in the country, with the hope that, as the title suggests, women can become independent business owners who are able to contribute significantly to the economy. That brings us to the end of this week's edition of This Week with the President. Thank you for joining me. For regular updates on the Ministry of the Presidency, go to our website at www.motp.gov.gy, like our Facebook page, Ministry of the Presidency, and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at MOTP Guyana. To have a safe and productive rest of the week, goodbye.